Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. Well, last episode, after a recess where we got to speak some more to Ray about what happened, we returned to the courtroom to find Raiten Menimemo on the stand. The journal that had been following Natsume Soseki around as we queried his reason for being on the scene, confronting his first testimony, the camera never lies, by demonstrating by the monogram pen that he had a connection with the victim. We now take on his next testimony, with Soseki having been brought to the stand as Raiten looks to expose his secret. I asked the Englishwoman for an interview, but she declined, so I left the hut without making a fuss. Then, watching secretly from outside, I saw the woman being stabbed and the other witnesses come running. The detective realized that the victim still had a pulse, so he ran off to fetch help. That's when this writer man here asked the woman a very significant question. But he didn't say anything about that in the testimony, which is why Menimemoism demands I reveal it now. Without revealing anything. Ah, you want me to read the headline and then read the article? Sure. You mean to say the victim... The victim regained consciousness? And when she did, you decided to ask her a question? That's, true, yes. He did. And that's not all. The woman gave him a very definite answer. An answer that incriminates the accused. This is preposterous! Why am I only hearing about this now? Why didn't you mention this before, you yokel hack? It wasn't even a conversation! Yes, I did pose the withering English Rose a question. I don't deny it. But she could no longer speak. She was barely conscious even. Counsel for the defense, I expect a thorough cross-examination to be conducted here. This court must and will know the truth. Absolutely, Your Excellency. The reporter is claiming that Miss Brett implicated Ray somehow. What on earth could have happened in that hut? I'm pretty sure we're going to have to press to find out. And probably later on in the statements, so the first statements probably don't have that much in it. But still, we will press the witness's secrets. I asked the Englishwoman for an interview, but she declined, so I left the hut without making a fuss. Hold it! Really? You asked her for an interview, you say? Well, of course I did. I wanted to ask her about the incident she was involved in at the end of last year. About the case in which Dr. John H. Wilson lost his life. That's not the way I phrased it. Menimemoism calls for straight talking. Why did you murder Dr. Wilson, is how I put it to her. Yes, that sort of talking is as straight as a ruler. Ask every question as if you're asking for a menu in a restaurant, I say. It's the best way. A veteran at the paper taught me that. And how did Miss Brett answer? With one simple phrase. Mystery is a woman's charm. Phew, that told me. So I waltzed right out of there. Really? Something about that doesn't seem to fit quite together. Leave every room as if you're waltzing in a dance floor, I say. It's the best way. A veteran of the paper told me that. Sure, I dance around when I leave rooms too. And watching secretly from outside, I saw the woman being stabbed and the other witnesses come running. Hold it! That was very persistent of you, considering that Miss Brett had just turned you away. Persistence wins the prize! Any memoist will tell you that, memoist. What a word. Let them think you've left, and just when they lower their guard, that's when you swoop in for the scoop. And the fruits of your labor are all too apparent in this telling photograph. Though I'm sure the young yokel student would rather not be reminded of this damning evidence. Actually, it's thanks to that photograph that we managed to identify this witness. And now that you found me, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I've got nothing to hide. I'm sure. Please, do go ahead, witness. The court is eager to hear what you have to say. Try to stop me? That's a story to tell here, and I'm gonna tell it. The detective realized that the victim still had a pulse, so he ran off to fetch help. Hold it! And Soseki-san remained behind in the hut. That's right. Yep. Our awful friend here was a blabbering wreck, shaking all over from his head to his toes. Mustache twitching, eyes bulging. What do you expect? You don't know the terrifying troubles that taunted me whilst traveling abroad. Back behind baleful bars. They'll be coming for me, surely. That's all I could think. I felt as though I were gasping for air, drowning in a sea of cold sweat. What was Soseki-san? His experiences in London have scarred him deeply. As the world seemed to close in around me, I quietly recited a prayer to Amida Buddha. Eternal emptiness, empty eternity! The end is coming for me, surely! No sutras are to be resound in my courtroom, please. And now we come to the crucial part. That's when it happened. That's when this writer man here asked the woman a very significant question. Yeah, but what?
Hold it!
This doesn't actually tell us. What question? What exactly did he say? Well now, you should hear that from the horse's mouth, I think. Don't you, Mr. Ryman? Ah!
Out with it, you yokel hack! What did you say to her? What did you say to the dying English woman?
Well, in truth, I've been catching crabs at the water's edge and building castles in the sand, you see. Well, the seaside is a place to be at leisure, I suppose, even for a grown man. But then, all of a sudden, in that little beach hut, a young girl's panic-stricken cries for help pierced the air. Ray! I ran up to the beach to see what was happening, to find the defendant leaning over the collapsed victim. As soon as Inspector Hasanaga saw Miss Brett on the ground, he sprinted off to get help. And then, just a moment later, I heard a faint moan. A moan for the dead English woman. I nearly jumped out of my skin! But what did you ask her, Soseki-san? I asked her, who did this to you? Don't protract this any longer. How did the woman respond? She didn't. She said nothing in response. But... When in the stand, you will answer the questions asked of you unambiguously. Now, without evasion or reticence, I demand you amend your testimony. I will! I asked her who did this to you, but she never replied.
Hold it!
So you try to find out who the culprit was. He who asks the question is a fool for a minute. He who does not remains a fool forever. And having been labelled a criminal twice during my time in Great Britain, I was quick to make up my mind. Better to be a fool for a minute than remain a fool in prison forever.
However, you've indicated that the victim failed to respond, is that correct?
I know why. I know why the English woman said nothing. She was ignoring me because of my stupid mustache, because I'm Japanese. Oh dear. Soseki-san has really developed a dislike for the English, it seems. Having read the report on his time in Great Britain, I can't say I'm surprised at his xenophobia. But the English woman didn't ignore you at all. Did she, Mr. Riderman? Well, yes, alright. She did respond in a manner of speaking, I suppose. She just lifted a trembling finger and pointed in the direction of the defendant.
Hold it!
Miss Brett pointed a finger at the defendant. Soseki-san, is that really true? It's not easy to stand here and say this, but when we first entered the beach hut, the English woman was sprawled on the floor before us, with a student girl standing on the far side of her. And when I asked who did this to you, the English woman summoned her last ounce of strength to point a trembling finger at the back of the hut. Which was, it can't be denied, in the direction of the student girl who stands accused today. No. Soseki-san, why on earth did you neglect to mention this in your original testimony? But fiddlesticks, I say! This is not a British court of law. You will respond in Japanese. Yes, of course. The Englishwoman did point a finger towards the back of the hut, but I was trembling, and she was trembling, and everything was a blur. And thinking about it, I feel as though perhaps she was pointing in a slightly different direction. Actually, no, not slightly, in a very different direction to where the student girl was standing. To somewhere at the back of the hut, where nobody was standing at all. You mean that your memory of events and the direction in which the victim was pointing are both unclear? Yes, that's it, unclear. I'm very, very unclear.
Objection! Your Excellency, surely this proves the matter beyond all reasonable doubt. Yes, the woman may barely have been conscious, and yes, perhaps her finger wavered slightly. But there can be no doubt that this was an attempt by the victim to confirm the identity of her assailant. Why? Because, as the court can see, there was no one other than the accused in the direction the victim was pointing. It is now abundantly clear that no one besides the accused could possibly have committed this crime.
I'm inclined to agree. And in the absence of any credible argument to the contrary, I believe we can now conclude this trial.
No! No!
The headline's writing itself. Dashing lawyers hopes dashed. 92 point across the whole page will do an extra edition. This is a serious blow, Susato. Unless we're able to identify the true culprit and substantiate our claim with evidence, the judge will give his ruling and the trial will be over.
But that's impossible, Father. We don't even know how the crime was committed yet.
Impossible though the task may seem, we have no choice. We must think back over everything we've learned thus far. Somewhere in all those details, I'm confident we'll find the clue we need.
Ray gave us her account of how events unfolded in the defendant's antechamber before the trial resumed. She told us what happened at the precise moment Miss Brett was killed. The Englishwoman was sitting at the back of the hut listening to what I was saying. And then, a moment later, she suddenly got to her feet. Before collapsing on the floor in front of me, with a knife in her back. How could Miss Brett have been stabbed in the back in a beach hut that was empty but for herself and Ray? Somewhere amid all the information we've gathered so far, there must be an answer to that question.
I take it then that the defense has nothing further to add.
So, the gallant yokel student's luck finally runs out. I can't say I'm surprised.
In that case, I am ready to deliver my final verdict on this matter.
This is a crucial turning point now. If I can't establish what really happened, it's over. Where was the real culprit hiding? And how did he or she stab the victim?
I mean, let's go with what is, I think, the pretty much obvious.
The fact that it's a beach hut in the middle of the beach, and it's just a thinly barred wall of just a little bit of wood, which you could easily, looking at the seat, stab someone through, correct? So I'm assuming the beach hut plan is what we're gonna need, but I know how!
Objection!
The person who stabbed her wasn't even remotely in the hut.
Your Excellency, I respectfully ask you to postpone your adjudication for the time being.
Oh? To what end, counsel?
The defense would like to present the court with an alternative theory. An alternative theory that can explain who the victim was actually trying to implicate with her dying gesture.
Objection!
An alternative theory? Ha! None exists.
Objection!
There was someone else present at the scene who could have committed this crime. What? And the victim, Miss Brett, tried to reveal who it was to those around her at the time by mustering all her remaining strength and pointing a trembling finger in the killer's direction. This is fiction! Fantasy!
Very well. As you seem so sure of yourself, counsel, I am prepared to hear your alternative theory. So, young Ryotaro Naruhodo.
Yes, Your Excellency.
You will present your latest theory to the court by means of this plan. Aha! At the moment the victim was stabbed, where exactly you're proposing the culprit was concealed?
Anywhere here.
Take that!
Naruhodo-san would never give up, and I'm in Naruhodo now. The true culprit who fatally stabbed Miss Brett was concealed in this location here.
Are you mad, counsel? You're suggesting the culprit was outside the hut.
What? What?
It's more Mr. Raiten's expression I was interested in. Order, order, order! But student lawyer Naruhodo-san Esquire! That makes no sense at all! You've just pointed out the exact spot where I was hiding to get my scoop snap. But I didn't see any suspicious individuals loitering about, I could swear to that.
Obviously, if the culprit had been outside the hut, there was no way that he or she could have stabbed the victim who was inside the hut.
Actually, Prosecutor Ouchie, there is a way. And in point of fact, the defense can prove evidence strongly suggesting that is precisely the way Miss Brett was killed.
You're bluffing. You're bluffing, you yokel.
A defense's assertion is clearly too fantastical for the court to comprehend. You will need to give us more guidance, counsel. What piece of evidence corroborates your theory that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut?
Like, what one really indeed?
I mean, let's start going through all. I don't think the autopsy is going to be it, of course.
It's more a case of what we haven't used. And there's something clearly in this shot that shows something was jammed through a gap. Just here alone. That's pretty perfect. I guess this one works too, in a sense. I don't know what angle this was from. This looks more like a side angle than a back angle. Oh no, maybe back a little still. Either one of these? We haven't actually used this for anything, if I'm right in saying. But it's more about that. I guess the magnifying glass is good for something.
Take that!
The original photographic print of the crime scene.
Yes, it's clearly visible in this print. The trace of the fatal thrust that was delivered from outside the beach hut.
Objection!
Do take us for fools. There's no hint of any such thing.
I'm not sure that everyone present would agree. Someone, at least, appears to have noticed what it is that I'm referring to.
Counsel, once again I must call on you to be explicit for the court. Where on this photograph is the trace of the stabbing which you claim took place from outside the hut?
Take that!
Look closely just here. In the screen at the back of the hut, you can see the effects of a blade having been forced through the reeds.
No, I can't see any such thing.
It's true that the hut in question had 4 walls as you'd expect. However, by parting the reeds, a knife blade could easily penetrate them.
This is extraordinary!
Yes. The true culprit actually stabbed the victim from outside the beach hut. And of everyone present at the scene, there is only one person who could have done that. Only one person who was directly outside the hut when Miss Brett was killed. Raiten Menimemo, San. It could only have been you.
No!
Objection!
This preposterous idea leaves me almost speechless. Just look at the photograph again. The victim lies almost exactly in the center of the beach hut, does she not? Are we to assume, as part of this farcical scenario, that the assailant was a knife thrower?
Objection!
No, of course not.
We're not.
If you recall the testimony of the defendant about the events just before the victim's death, inside the beach hut I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable.
A stool.
Have another look at the photograph. A slit in the reed screen would align perfectly with the back of a person who was sitting on that stool.
My word! So, in fact, the victim was...
killed while sitting on that stool by a stab wound to her back delivered through the reed screen. Having been attacked, Miss Brett rose to her feet instinctively. But then, unable to speak, she collapsed on the floor in the middle of the hut. Before the defendant, Membami-san's appalled eyes. And that, Your Excellency, is the truth of what happened on the beach that day. By your silence, Menimemo-san, I take it that you don't deny the charge.
This is absurd.
That will do. It would appear that we have a tacit admission of guilt from the witness. Accordingly, this court has successfully established the truth of this matter, which means that the defendant, Membami-san, is innocent of the crime.
Oh, thank goodness. I finally made him cave.
I must say, I've never been more proud.
No, this can't be. The Ouchi clan can't. What of my growth? My growth of hope? It wasn't all an apparition. I can't accept this, I won't.
I see no reason for the continuance of this trial. I will therefore move to conclude proceedings by delivering my final verdict and... Well, this is all very convenient. This is how the highest court in our mighty empire delivers justice, is it? Suppressing well-meaning citizens' freedom to speak and branding them as criminals.
But we've established that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut through the reed screen walls.
And no one but you was in the place at the time to have his hand on the hilt of the blade. It's a perfectly logical deduction.
So, your argument hinges on the location of whoever stabbed the Englishwoman, does it? Well, it seems a little irrelevant now. Irrelevant? Where she was stabbed? How she was stabbed? It doesn't matter. I mean, whether she was stabbed at all makes no difference if you think about it. After all, this trial's already shown the whole thing hinges on something else. What are you talking about? Brace yourself, little man. I'm talking about the fact that everything's changed.
Because of the dirt you dug up.
What?
Enough obscurity. Explain yourself, witness.
What's to explain? I'm talking about the poison, of course. The poison? Let's ask the professor for a comment on the situation, shall we? I understand that deadly poison you were developing was stolen from your laboratory, correct? And it's been shown this poison was administered to the victim, Miss Brett. Is that right?
That is correct. The unusual constriction of the victim's pupils are a sure sign that this particular poison was used.
I see. So, presumably that means that the victim already had the poison in her body before she was stabbed. Ah!
Given that her pupils were clearly constricted, it seems highly likely, yes. If she had been dead already, the poison could not have circulated in her blood.
How refreshing to hear the argument of a metropolitan mind. Precisely! It matters not a jot who stabbed whom, in whose back, and with whose blade. Because, quite simply, the Englishwoman's life was taken not by the knife, but by the poison!
Objection!
But that can be explained by the poison being on the blade, as I already...
Objection!
Forgotten already, have we, yokel? During these very proceedings, the laboratory of the Professor Joside assisted in proving that the blade of the weapon used to attack the victim had no trace of poison on it whatsoever. So let me get this down. The facts, as skillfully established by the defense in this trial, turned out to be a headline-making red herring. Is that about right? Well...
Order! But where does this leave us? How, in that case, did the poison enter the victim's body?
There is an undeniably obvious answer to that. The lady most likely imbibed it. You mean she drank it?
Have another look at the photograph here, as you can see. A bottle of carbonated water and a glass had been knocked onto the sandy floor of the beach hut. The poison could have been slipped into either.
So somebody made Miss Brett drink it?
Well, what do you know? Look at those dashing eyes. This will make a great front page shot. Hey, why the bewitching stare? After all, I'm the last person you should be looking at. It would make no sense at all that I poisoned the woman, would it? I mean, that's been established already.
Hold it!
Established? What are you talking about?
Huh? Don't tell me you've forgotten. That's a little hard to believe, given that the person who established it was you.
Me? What on earth does he mean?
Oh, let me capture those wide eyes. This is prime press fodder, this is. It would seem that this trial is not destined to end yet after all. I hereby call upon the witness to give further testimony. That's great, that is. Let me get a shot of that magnificent beard, Your Excellency. You claim it to be impossible that you were the one responsible for administering the poison to the victim. You will explain to the court in your testimony the basis upon which you make such a claim. I'm a journo, and I'm a man. I've never tried to run or hide from anything in my life. And I'm not about to start now, because that's Menimemoism.
For a brief moment, I thought I'd illuminate the truth, but it slipped right back into obscurity again. Just where is this trial going to take us?
To a completely new testimony, that's for sure. Complete innocence. Well, to be honest, I think we will end this episode of The Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolved here and now. For I feel we are very close, considering the amount of evidence we have to play with, and the length overall of what should be a first adventure. But you never know, because technically it's the 6th. Join me next time we get to the bottom of this case. Will we get a verdict? Will we uncover the complete and utter truth? I'll see you next time for more. Bye-bye.